You stand beneath a Syrian sun that feels close enough to burn through bone. The air tastes of salt and ash. Your skin glistens, not from sweat, but from the oil of sacrifice. Before you, a black stone, smooth as glass, heavy as sin, rises into the light, swaying on ropes pulled by trembling hands. In that instant, you understand. This is not a God made by men. This is a God that fell to earth. Before we step deeper into this story, if you're watching from the deserts of Arabia, the streets of Rome, or somewhere far from both, take a breath. History, after all, is a shared hallucination. Let me know where you're joining us from. The fact that across oceans and centuries, we can gather here to summon the memory of a 15-year-old boy who believed himself divine. That is its own kind of miracle. If you're ready, like, subscribe, and step closer to the fire. Now, picture it. Emesa, 218 CE. A city suspended between Rome's marble order and the wild pulse of the East. The smell of frankincense and goat's blood drifts through its narrow streets. Drums thunder from the temple of Elagabalus, the sun god, lord of the black stone fallen from the heavens. And there, amid the chanting priests and veiled women, moves a child dressed in crimson silk. His face is painted white, his eyes rimmed with kohl. His hands rise in rhythm with the drums, and the people around him tremble, because when he speaks, it is not the boy they hear, it is the god. His name, then, was Varius Avitus Bassianus. To Rome, an unimportant provincial. To Emesa, the living vessel of the divine. Some say he could summon visions in the smoke, that when he sang to the sun, the light itself shifted. But faith is a dangerous currency. It feeds hunger, but it also stirs ambition. And few hungered more than his mother, Julia Soimius. She was niece to the late Empress Julia Domna, sister-in-law to Septimius Severus. Once her family had ruled the world. Now they were exiles under a forgettable emperor named Macrinus. Yet in that temple, watching her son transfigured by the god's shadow, Soimius saw a prophecy made flesh. The divine chooses its vessel, she whispered to her sister, and Rome will follow the sun. The story spread like smoke, of a boy priest who communed with the heavens, who could bring victory to the legions if only he were made emperor. And among the soldiers of Syria, weary of Macrinus's discipline and hungry for myth, the rumor became a banner. One dawn, the camp awoke to horns and chanting. The cohorts gathered in the dust. Before them stood the boy, clad not in armor but in priestly robes, holding a small black stone aloft. "The god commands it," cried his mother from beside him. "Elagabalus chooses his son to rule the world." A general scoffed, until a spear struck him through the throat. The soldiers watched the blood steam in the sun. Then, slowly, knees bent, voices rose. The desert echoed with the name that would soon terrify Rome. Imperator Elagabalus Augustus. Macrinus fled north, his armies crumbling under visions of divine wrath. Within weeks, his head was paraded through Antioch. The boy's banner, bearing the sun's black disk, was carried before a column of singing soldiers. But the closer they marched to Rome, the more unease crept in. What kind of emperor wore rouge? What kind of emperor danced before idols? When the emissaries of the Senate arrived, they found the youth kneeling before his stone, whispering in a language no Roman understood. His mother spoke for him. "He rules by the will of the sun," she said, smiling faintly. "He brings a new dawn to Rome." The senators bowed. They had seen too many dawns turn to dusk. The journey to the capital was a pageant of omens. Storms broke over the Alps, though it was summer. Flocks of birds followed the imperial convoy as if drawn to its strange gravity. And each night the boy prayed to his god beneath a silk canopy, his face lit by flame. He asked not for victory, he already had that, but for transformation. "Let me be as you are," he murmured, pressing his palms against the cold black stone. "Neither man nor woman, only light. Some said he did not sleep those nights. Some said he glowed. By the time the caravan reached the Tiber, Rome had already begun to whisper. The East was coming, not as a supplicant, but as conqueror. The Praetorian Guard stood ready at the gates, torn between duty and dread. When the new emperor appeared, he was veiled and silent, the sacred meteorite carried behind him on a golden litter. The crowd gasped, not for his beauty, but for the feeling that they were witnessing something indecently holy. A boy who believed he could merge flesh with Godhead. A family that believed they could command the empire through him. That night, Rome's old gods were said to have turned their faces away. Jupiter's temple stood dark. The augurs found their birds silent. And in the palace once built for Augustus, a child lay awake, dreaming of the sun. Outside, thunder rolled across a sky that refused to sleep. In the east, a black stone gleamed beneath torchlight. And somewhere in the heart of the empire, the first crack formed, not in marble, but in reason itself. Rome awoke to trumpets that did not sound Roman. They wailed, long, mournful, Eastern notes that curled through the forum like smoke. The citizens stepped into the streets, half curious, half afraid. They had heard rumors of the boy from Syria, the priest who had conquered an emperor with prayer and silk. But no one expected this. The gates yawning open to receive not a soldier, not even a man, but something between both and beyond. First came the slaves, their bodies dusted in gold, gleaming beneath the morning sun. Then the dancers, their limbs wrapped in purple gauze, moving in spirals as drums rolled from afar. Behind them, drawn by white horses with jeweled bridles, came a chariot draped in red silk. Upon it stood a veiled youth whose robes shimmered with embroidered suns. And beside him, raised on a litter of cedar and gold, rested the black meteorite, the god Elagabalus himself. The crowd did not cheer. They watched. The Praetorian Guard, lined in perfect formation, shifted uneasily as the chariot passed. One murmured, "This is not Rome," and another replied, "No, this is something older." The senators bowed stiffly, their faces frozen between reverence and disgust. When the veil was lifted, a hush fell. The boy emperor's face glowed with paint and oil, his lips tinted red, his eyes rimmed in kohl. He smiled faintly, almost tenderly, as if he pitied them all. Then he raised his hand and spoke, his voice high yet commanding. "Rome," he said, "behold the sun." The silence broke like glass. From that moment, the empire began to tilt toward the light, his light. The emperor decreed that Elagabalus, the Syrian sun god, would be worshipped above all others, even Jupiter. The Senate resisted. The priests of the old gods whispered that the boy was mad. But resistance wilted quickly beneath the warmth of gold. Temples rose at his command. One upon the Palatine Hill so vast it blotted the skyline, its altars black with obsidian and amber. Every morning he would appear before the city at dawn, clad in robes of gold and purple, leading the sacred meteorite in procession. He would sing in a language no Roman understood, the syllables rolling like thunder across marble courtyards. Women wept, men trembled, and the city, slowly, began to believe. But belief demanded beauty. The emperor transformed the palace into a theater of sensation. Walls were hung with silks from the east. Fountains poured wine instead of water. Banquets lasted until dawn, where senators reclined beside dancers and musicians played songs forbidden by Roman tradition. Guests spoke later of strange rites, of sacrifices that felt like seductions, of feasts that blurred the line between worship and desire. It was whispered that the emperor had married a Vestal virgin, breaking Rome's oldest taboo. Others claimed he had wed the god himself, performing a ceremony where he stood as bride beneath the rising sun. "Call me lady," he once told a soldier who dared to speak his name without reverence. I am the bride of Elagabalus." The city laughed in private, but no one laughed aloud. Those who mocked too freely found themselves summoned to the palace and did not return. Others were seduced by the spectacle. Poets wrote verses to the twin suns that ruled Rome, mortal and divine. Women imitated his painted eyes, men copied his flowing robes. It became fashionable to question what a Roman truly was. Still, beneath the perfume and gold, something darker simmered. The old gods grew silent. Jupiter's priests found their altars empty. The Senate's power dissolved, replaced by the emperor's ecstatic will. Julia Soemias, his mother, moved through the corridors like a queen regent, her smile bright as a blade. She whispered to her son as he prayed beside the meteorite, "They will never understand you, so let them fear you instead." And fear him they did. One night, as thunder rolled over the city, a senator was seen fleeing the palace, his toga torn, muttering of rites that no Roman eye should see. He was found days later, drowned in a fountain filled with rose petals. Rumor became weapon, scandal became policy. Yet amid the decadence, there was a strange kind of genius. The emperor blurred every boundary between God and man, east and west, gender and power, and in doing so, he forced Rome to glimpse itself anew. Could divinity be remade in human form? Could the empire survive a ruler who refused to be defined? For a while, the answer seemed to be yes. The people grew accustomed to the golden dawns, the incense, the sight of their emperor dancing at sunrise before the black stone. Merchants thrived, temples filled, the city pulsed with feverish life. The empire, it seemed, could absorb anything, even a god in drag. But one evening, as the emperor stood atop the temple of Elagabalus, arms raised toward the sinking sun, a shadow fell across his face. The light seemed to hesitate, as if unwilling to descend. Those nearby swore they heard him whisper, almost pleading, "Stay with me a little longer." The next morning, Rome awoke to a silence it had not known in years. No drums, no chanting, only the caw of distant crows circling the temple roofs. The sun had risen, but something in it felt cold. The palace no longer sleeps. Servants whisper through corridors heavy with perfume and dread. The fountains have gone dry, the wine tastes of ash, and even the torches sputter as if unwilling to bear witness. In the upper chambers of the Palatine, the emperor who once called himself both priest and bride paces in silence, his robes torn, his coal-stained eyes wild from sleepless nights. The god he worshipped no longer answers. Outside, the city trembles. The drums that once summoned dawn now echo hollow through the hills. The temples stand empty, their altars littered with wilted roses. The people of Rome have grown tired of miracles. They want stability. They want bread. They want an emperor, not a son. Elagabalus, born Varius Avitus Bassianus, feels the change in the air like the fading warmth of sunset. Once, the praetorians would kneel as he passed, their spears lifted in reverence. Now their eyes follow him with the cold precision of men measuring distance for a strike. His mother, Julia Soemias, still clings to the dream. "You are chosen," she whispers, clutching his trembling hands. "The god tests you, that is all. You must show strength. Rome loves strength." "Rome loves death," he replies, voice raw, "and it has chosen mine." The night grows long. In desperation, he returns to his god. Alone in the temple before the black meteorite that once glowed like a heart, he kneels. His voice breaks as he prays. "You made me in your image. You filled me with fire. Why now do you turn away?" The stone is silent. The only answer is the hiss of the dying torches. Whispers slither through the city. That the emperor sacrifices children, that he drowns lovers in honey, that he plots to castrate the senators. Truth has ceased to matter. Scandal itself has become a weapon. The people who once marveled now recoil. The myth has become monstrous. Still, the emperor clings to ritual. Night after night he summons musicians, priests, and dancers into the marble halls. They move beneath red lamps, their bodies glistening with oil, their laughter manic and brittle. The music rises until it drowns out thought. It is not pleasure anymore. It is resistance, a final act of faith through excess. At the center of it all stands Elagabalus, painted like the dawn, arms raised to an invisible sun. "If they will not love me as emperor," he declares, "then they will worship me as God." The crowd answers with forced laughter, but their eyes slide away. Even the air seems to hold its breath. By morning, the palace reeks of roses and fear. The praetorians refuse their pay. Julia Maesa, the emperor's grandmother, the true architect of dynasties, meets with them in secret. She promises peace, promises order, promises a new emperor, the young Severus Alexander, mild and obedient, a cousin to Elagabalus. The guards bow their heads. The choice is made. But betrayal takes time to ripen. For weeks, the emperor senses the noose tightening. He orders executions at random, accusing servants of treachery, priests of blasphemy, generals of lusting after his throne. Blood stains the palace floors, but paranoia only deepens the cracks. His mother pleads for calm. "You cannot kill the wind," she warns. "It will only return as a storm." And the storm comes. It is winter, 222 CE. The emperor dines alone beneath the fading frescoes of the palace, surrounded by the ghosts of his court. Outside, thunder rolls, not from the sky, but from boots. The praetorians march through the gardens, torches flaring like comets. Julia Somias bursts into his chamber. "They come!" she gasps. "Hide, quickly!" He laughs, a sound too soft, too broken. Where does one hide from the sun? They flee through corridors once filled with music. Behind them, the shouts grow louder, the iron doors shudder. The emperor clutches his mother's hand as they stumble into a storeroom. The smell of cedar and oil thick in the air. He presses his painted face against her shoulder. "If the god is gone," he whispers, "then let us burn together." The door bursts open. The praetorians fill the room, their faces hard, unreadable. The captain steps forward. "Forgive us, Caesar," he says, though his tone carries no prayer. They strike. The emperor does not scream. He only lifts his eyes toward the ceiling, as if waiting for light to pour through. When it does not, he smiles faintly, almost with relief. The next day, his body and his mother's are dragged through the streets, stripped and mutilated. The crowd gathers, not in hatred but in fascination. The son's bride reduced to flesh and dust. His corpse is thrown into the Tiber, carried away like a broken reflection of the dawn. But even as the waters close, something of him remains. In the baths, in whispered tales, in the fevered dreams of poets, the image of the painted emperor lingers, the boy who believed that power could be beauty, that divinity could wear a human face. Rome will erase his name from its monuments, burn his likeness, curse his memory. Yet centuries later, the world will still speak of him, of the boy who tried to marry the sun, and in doing so, revealed how fragile the borders of the human truly are. The empire will heal, but the marble will never shine the same way again. Beneath every triumphal arch, beneath every prayer to order and reason, a single question will smolder, like an ember refusing to die. What if he had been right?